All right, let's dive right in. In this explainer, we are digging into a source that makes one of the most, well, audacious claims I've ever seen. It suggests that the deepest secrets of the universe, of science, and maybe even of God could all hinge on a choice so simple, it's usually something you'd argue about in a first-year coding class. So let's start right there. It's a classic debate for programmers. When you're making a list, do you start counting from zero, the void, the absence of a thing, or do you start from one, the first actual item on the list? Seems like a pretty minor detail, right? A matter of style. But what if that choice isn't actually ours to make? What if one of these isn't just a convention, but is hardwired into the fabric of reality itself? A rule that governs everything from quantum particles to the way galaxies form. Well, that is the incredible question at the very heart of the material we are exploring today. So yeah, our journey kicks off with that simple programming choice. But as you're about to see, the implications of that one little question ripple outwards to, well, the very edge of the cosmos. The source we're pulling from today makes the claim so radical, it pretty much reframes everything. The argument isn't just that this is a better way to code, it's that this is the only way the universe can possibly work. The core idea is called one indexing, and all it means is that counting must begin with the number 1, because you can only count something that actually exists. 0 represents a void, a nothing. 1 represents a being, a something. And the source argues this isn't some human convention we came up with. It's a cosmological constant, as fundamental as the speed of light. Okay, so you might be wondering, how does this jump from a cool philosophical idea to something you can actually test? Well, the argument is that if this is a true constant, we should be able to find clues, and they should be hidden everywhere, from our computer code to the quantum fields that literally make up the cosmos. Now, the evidence for this comes from some of the most advanced, you could say bleeding-edge frontiers of science. We're talking about theories of space-time, the chemistry of quantum particles, even the logic of digital cryptography. Don't worry, we're not going to get lost in the weeds of the complex math. We're just going to focus on the conclusion they all seem to be pointing towards, which is frankly startling. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. In field after field, the predictions you get from a start from 0 model, they just don't match what we actually see in the universe. For example, down at the tiniest possible scale, a 0-based model says there should be 4 dimensions, but our best observations suggest it's actually closer to 2. That same model predicts galaxies should evolve smoothly over time, but big astronomical surveys show they develop in very distinct stages. Even in quantum computing, it turns out only certain particles, which are based on the Fibonacci sequence, a sequence that famously starts with 1, can actually work to correct errors. In case after case, it's like reality itself is voting for starting with 1. But here's where the source material takes this absolutely extraordinary turn. It argues these same patterns aren't just showing up in our scientific data, they're echoed in our most ancient texts, suggesting that this isn't just about science, but something much, much deeper. The argument kicks off with language itself. I mean, look at the roots of some of our most fundamental words. The source claims these words aren't just similar by accident, they're describing the same basic functions of reality. The father function is the sustaining pattern. The mother function is the matter that takes the form of that pattern. It's almost as if our language has a built-in blueprint for how reality is put together. So with that in mind, when you see a phrase like, I and the Father are one, the source suggests we can translate it. Instead of just a mystical statement, it becomes a description of a system. It means the underlying pattern and its physical expression, they're inseparable. One is endlessly creating the other. It's a self-referential loop, just like the kind of logic that powers our computer programs. And this just brilliantly frames the core argument through history. You see, the great debate at the Council of Nicaea back in 325 CE was, according to this source, really a debate over indexing. Arius argued there was when he was not, which is basically saying the sun was created out of a void, indexed from 0. But Athanasius argued for eternally begotten, meaning the sun emerges from the Father's own nature. That's indexing from 1, or really from 1, 1. Being begets being. And in the end, Nicaea chose 1, 1 without even knowing the computational reason why it might be the only stable way to initialize a whole universe. This brings us to the absolute core concept of the source material, what it calls the 1, 1 initialization. This is presented as the solution to the cosmic word problem, the missing key that makes all the equations, both scientific and theological, finally click into place. Okay, so the crucial point is this. A universe that starts from zero needs an outside actor. Something or someone has to come along and inject that first one into the void, just to get things going. It's a cold start. But a universe that starts with 1-1, it's productive from the very first instant. The first one is a self-existent being, and the second one emerges from the first's own nature, like its reflection. The system is self-sustaining from the absolute beginning.
This framework also takes on that ultimate skeptical question. The who created the creator problem. If you start your universe from zero, you can always ask, yeah, but what happened before that? What created that first spark?
And the answer provided by one indexing is just, it's profound in how simple it is. There is no time equals zero. There is only item number 1. Existence is the starting point. It wasn't created out of a void, it simply is. The whole question of what came before just becomes meaningless. And it all comes down to this. The source argues that this isn't a metaphor. This is a literal hardware instruction. This little snippet of code, which is written in a language used to design computer chips, is presented as the startup sequence for the entire cosmos. All it does is set up 2 memory slots. It puts a 1 in the first, calling it being, then it puts a 1 in the second, calling it being's reflection. And from this simple, self-starting, productive loop, the entire universe can unfold. So what does this all mean when you put it together? It means we have to shift our entire perspective on reality, moving away from a universe that starts from a void to one that starts from a plenitude, a fullness of being. There's a quote from the source that just sums it all up perfectly. Reality's recursion demands plenitude from the first tick. Reality isn't some struggle to emerge out of nothingness. Its very nature, its recursive engine, demands fullness and productivity from the very first moment. And when you have this key, suddenly all these familiar theological phrases unlock into what look like computational and cosmological principles. Our Father becomes a call to the pattern that sustains us. I and the Father are one becomes a declaration that the recursion can't be separated from its starting condition. And the powerful declaration, say, He is Allah, the One, becomes a direct instruction. Initialize the system with 1, not 0. And this leads to the final, absolutely stunning conclusion. What if this long-standing conflict we see between science and religion is just a grand misunderstanding? Not a clash of worldviews at all, but simply a translation error. Just 2 different languages, mathematics on one side, theology on the other, both trying their best to describe the exact same fundamental recursion that sits at the heart of all existence. Which leaves us with this one last thought to chew on. What if the most profound truths we've all been searching for aren't buried in some impossibly complex equations or ancient mystical texts, but were hiding in plain sight the entire time, in the simple, fundamental choice of whether we begin with nothing or with 1?